What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video breakdown where we want to help the world love the church better and the church understand the world better. So that's our goal here. So today we're going to be breaking down a video that's going to be a little bit controversial, but I think it is so important. And by the end of this video, you'll see why I believe it is so important. I'm actually going to talk about where gender, this new modern gender study came from, where sex and gender is interchangeable, and the dark history of that and how evil it actually is. So I hope you stick around for the end. I may even have to do 2 videos because it could get pretty lengthy because there's so much to say about this, okay? There's so much to say. So today we're going to be looking at a video with Ellen DeGeneres and Dwayne Wade. And I do, to some degree, want to tread softly because I don't think that everyone who holds to these beliefs are necessarily evil. I believe it comes from an evil place, but I do think the indoctrination of many people that believe in these theories come from lack of knowledge of where it comes from, right? They have just sat there in their seats in the universities and just absorbed what the professors have said. And some of the professors themselves have been indoctrinated by bad history. And they themselves believe it for all the wrong reasons. But I believe in going back to the root of all the history of a belief, right? I want to get to the root of the history of a belief and where it came from. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully it can shed some light on how dark and wicked this movement actually is. But today we're going to talk about the Ellen DeGeneres interview with Dwayne Wade. And so let's just dive in and let's go over that first. We'll get to the history of gender studies at the end, but I want you to watch it first without me commenting on it and see what kind of feel you get from it, because I like for you yourself to see it first and kind of think through it, and then I'm going to help you think through it of how do we engage this as a Christian? How do we speak into this as God's royal representatives sent to the earth, or made in the earth to represent God and to subdue and serve the earth and take dominion over it? How are we supposed to speak into culture about this? That's how I want us to think today, okay? So let's check it out.
There are so many parents that are just, oh, you're not going the way I imagined or wanted you to be, and freak out, and you're so loving and supportive of Zaya, and what a special child she is.
Yes, she is. Thank you so much for that. First of all, me and my wife Gabrielle Union, we are proud. When I say proud, we are proud parents of a child in the LGBTQ plus community, and we're proud allies as well. And we take our roles and our responsibility as parents very seriously. So when our child comes home with a question, when our child comes home with an issue, when our child comes home with anything, it's our job as parents to listen to that, to give them the best information that we can, the best feedback that we can. And that doesn't change because sexuality is now involved in it. So once Zaya, 12-year-old, came home, and first Zion, everybody, I don't know if everyone knows, originally named Zion born as a boy, came home and said, hey, so I want to talk to you guys. I think going forward, I'm ready to live my truth. And I want to be referenced as she and her. I would love for you guys to call me Zaya. And so internally, now is our job to, one, go out and get information, to reach out to every relationship that we have. My wife reached out to everybody on the cast of Pose. And we're just trying to figure out as much information we can to make sure that we give our child the best opportunity to be, her best self.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that it's one thing. It's one thing to have this at home, but knowing that she's going to be out in the world because you're a public figure, even if you weren't, she's going to school, and to want to be protective and to make sure she's safe, that must be a scary thing, because it's one thing for you to love her and your wife to love her, but you just want everyone to love her the same way.
Exactly. And once Zion came home and said, hey, you call me Zaya and I'm ready to take on this, I looked at it and said, you are a leader. You are a leader, and it's our opportunity to allow you to be a voice. Right now it's through us because she's 12 years old, but eventually it would be through her.
Right. Well, and Listen is an organization you're working with, and there's a lot of, if anybody else out there can relate to this and needs help, you can go to our website and we can direct you, because I'm sure there are a lot of people that just don't know what to do. So you're a great example.
So the first thing I want you to see, right, is that right from the beginning, Ellen kind of shows you that there's two worldviews at war here, right? There's two worldviews at war. There's the camp that believes that there is a truth and that we are called to align our lives to that truth. And then there's another camp that believes that the way to parent, right? So that's one camp of parenting. And then there's another camp that believes the way of parenting is to teach our kids that they can create their own truth and live it out, right? That you are the definer of reality. That you don't have to align your life to reality. You just create reality and then go live that out. So here's what's very confusing, right? And I want you to catch this, right? So Dwayne Wade correctly says, right? He correctly says that when our children come home with questions, that it is our job as parents to give them information, give them the best feedback. Yes, that is what it is called. That's what's called parenting, right? That's what it means to be a parent, to parent your children, right? They're young, they're 12 years old. They don't know what they want, right? They don't have a clue what they want. But then he immediately flips on that, right? It's very confusing. He immediately flips on that and he starts to tell a story, and he says when Zion came home, right, he told us that, hey, Dad, I'm ready to start living my own truth. There it is, right? I'm ready to start living my own truth, and I want you guys to reference me as a female, right? I want you to start calling me a female. I don't want to be called Zaya, right? And then D. Wade flips and he goes, so then we started to go out and try to find information on this. All of a sudden, it's like, well, what happened to parenting? So your child comes home and then all of a sudden you start taking cues from a 12-year-old and you start to go out and look for information to not question your child, right? They're not going to question their child. Instead, they're going to just go out and find information so that their child can justify living their own truth, right? And then you start to see, they go, we got information from our friends and our family. The cast of polls. I went and looked that up. You know what the cast of polls is? It's a movie. It's a movie about a financial analysis that decided to go out and live her own truth to be a pole dancer. I'm like, this is almost so crazy that I almost don't want to speak into it. But the reason I am speaking into it is because the world is starting to believe this, that we can create our own reality, that we don't have to align our lives to anything, that you just go out and create your own truth and live your own truth. So my biggest question is what happened to just asking questions? Right? I mean, why can't we all find common ground on this thing? If my son came home one day and said, hey, Dad, I want to be a female. My first response would be okay, let me ask you a question, buddy. What does it mean to be a female? What does it mean to be a girl? Right? And why did you come to that conclusion? Is that not a reasonable question to ask a 12-year-old? When a 12-year-old doesn't know what they want, they're emotional, they're hormonal, they're dealing with all these new feelings that they don't know what to do with. And instead of just asking them a question and going, hey, what does it mean to be female? Hey, what is sex? Right? What is human identity? Right? What is the biology of all this? Start asking your kids questions. Do we not want our kids to be kids that think, instead of just going out on the ledge and going, okay, buddy, I'm not going to ask you any questions. Let's start learning how you can become a female. You know what bothers me? If D. Wade's little boy would have came home and said, hey, Dad, I don't want to play basketball anymore. I want to quit. D. Wade would have probably had 1,000 questions. Whoa, man. If you start quitting now, you're going to quit forever, right? You're just going to keep quitting. You can't quit, right? And why do you want to quit? You're a great basketball player. He would have had all these questions, but his boy comes home and wants to be a girl, and we're like, yeah, man, live your own truth. And kind of back to this idea of living your own truth, right? When a kid says that and we, instead of challenging that, we uphold that, it just makes me think of how we are damaging kids with this strategy, right? Like if you want to damage your child for any sort of future, teach them that living their own truth, recreating reality to fit their needs, teach them that. Like that will guarantee them a destructive future, right? You want to know why our kids are depressed? You want to know why our kids are more disrespectful? You want to know why our kids are less willing to listen in reasonable conversations? Why they can't hold a job? Because they're taught that life is all about you. You get to define reality, and everyone else around you ought to adhere to how you define reality. We get into this section where Ellen is talking about protection and safety and how, you guys love Zion and want to protect him, but you also want the world to love and protect him and all of this stuff, right? And this is where we need to talk about the word love, right? We need to talk about this word love, because when you divorce love from truth, love no longer has any meaning, right? Like love no longer has any meaning. I don't even know what you're talking about when you say love, right? And so what has happened is our culture, it force feeds us this false notion of love, right? It force feeds it to us, and it is based upon tolerance and diversity, right? Like that is its defining features, right? Tolerance meaning not that you respect my opinion, but tolerance meaning you adopt my opinion as your own, right? I get to create my reality, and you have to not only respect it, but you have to uphold it in the public square, right? You have to adopt it as your own. And if you don't, you're unloving, right? And then we also are in this society and diversity as a diverse view of things, right? Like you are open to all views of love, right? That we all can define love how we want to, and you're open to that, right? And then on top of that, we have kind of like this holding truth in high suspicion, right? So we're kind of like very suspicious of the truth, right? Now, don't get me wrong. We applaud those who seek truth, right? But if you ever come out and say that you have found truth and therefore you are holding to an unyielding commitment to the truth, then you are all of a sudden called unloving. And that is where we are at in our culture today. And we have to understand why our culture is so confused on love, right? Because love without truth, it has no character, right? It has no substance. It has no real meaning, right? And when it is deprived of the truth, it ultimately deteriorates into self-love, right? And I'm gonna show you this later, what I'm talking about. But like Ellen and Dwayne Wade, they're talking about self-love, right? It's very selfish, right? The reason Ellen has Dwayne Wade on her show is because Dwayne Wade upholds what she wants to be true, right? And the reason she supports a 12-year-old boy turning into a girl is because it upholds what she wants to be true. It's very selfish. Now, she would never say that. She would never say that because that doesn't sound good, but it's very selfish, right? That's what it is, because when you divorce the truth from love, it deteriorates into self-love. It just does. You don't have any choice. That's the outcome of that, right? That's the repercussions of that. That's the consequences, right? And then truth without love, well, it doesn't have any power. And when it's divorced from the truth, it ultimately will breed inside of you self-righteousness, right? You've seen some Christians this way, right? When they divorce truth from love, or love from the truth, and they're very, not dogmatic, but they're very like just strong with everything, and they have no compassion and no love in the way that they speak, well, they just come off as very self-righteous, right? And so we always have to speak with love. About, what I was saying about Dwayne Wade and Ellen is you can see it in their conversation, right? They're saying, do whatever makes you happy, right? Do whatever makes you happy. That's self-love, right? Because they themselves live their life that way, right? That's why they want to support other people that go out and live their own truth, because they themselves live their own truth, right? It's all very selfish at the root of it. Here at the end, you see the pitch, right? You see the pitch, right? D. Wade. He's in an organization called Listen. You can go to our website and we'll point you to D. Wade, and all these organizations uphold our morals and values, and we want to teach you to parent and think like us. That's the pitch. I mean, that's the pitch. Now, what's fascinating about this, right, is in this whole video, you see the pitch at the end, but then you hear Dwayne Wade. He says that when our kids come home with questions, and, it's our job as parents to, give them information and feedback. And then when Zion came home and wanted to be a girl, it was my job to go out and get information. And everyone was like, yes, yes, yes. But my question is like, where are you getting the information from? Right? I mean, he kind of tells us, but like, what made you go to those resources to get information? Right? Because these are the same people that come at Christians and call us dogmatic. They say that we indoctrinate our children, that we don't teach our children to think. Instead, we just force feed them with Christianity and the Bible. And I'm sitting here and going, you're doing the same thing. Like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, I go to my church and my pastor and the Bible to get information, like dogmatic indoctrination, like you're just a bunch of closed-minded people. I'm like, you're doing the same thing. Like, what do you mean? Right? And I'm okay if that's what they want to do. I don't think it aligns with the reality whatsoever. It doesn't even align with biology, right? Not at all. It's pseudoscience, right? And I'm going to show you that here in just a second. But the whole point that I want to make is like, this is two worldviews colliding, right? So we need to quit acting like either one of these camps are inclusive, right? They put themselves up there like, we're so inclusive, except for the people that we disagree with, right? Everybody is exclusive. Everybody is making truth claims that are exclusive on reality. The question is, what is true? That ought to be what we're asking. What is true? Right? Like when you get to the root of these worldviews, what is true? That's the only question that matters. In the beginning, what? In the beginning, what? If in the beginning, God, then they got some real problems. And so I want to show you now the dark side of modern gender theory. The theory that they are trying to push into our society, the theory that they are trying to uphold. I want to show you where it comes from. Here is the dark history of modern gender theory. And maybe you haven't even heard anything about it. Well, if you haven't heard anything about it as a Christian, you need to know about it. Right? You need to understand these things because you're going to encounter people that believe in these things, and we as Christians are called, again, to take dominion, to subdue the earth, to serve it, right? To be God's royal representatives and teach people truth. Like, that's our duty before God. And it's also our duty and our honor and our highest delight to love God and to love others. Like, that's what we're supposed to be doing. So we need to know these things so that we can communicate with a world that's lost and has been indoctrinated, right? And has been deceived, right? It's our job to be able to do that. So, all right, so I want you to see why I'm so passionate, why I can come off a little bit strong on this topic, because it is so dark and so wicked. So dark and so wicked. So the modern gender theory is this, that sex and gender are not interchangeable, right? They're not the same thing, right? You have your biological sex and then you have your gender, right? And that gender is socially constructed, right? That gender, you can actually raise a boy to be a girl and they would ultimately be a girl, but, or a girl to be a boy and they would be a boy. And therefore your gender is something that is socially constructed, therefore you can unconstruct it, right? That's the simplest form without going into detail and making this an entire video on modern gender theory. But it's very modern, right? It's very modern that gender is fluid, right? That is interchangeable. That, we now are starting to see pronoun laws, right? Not so much in this country, but in Canada. Like, you can actually go to jail in Canada, I'm pretty sure, if you offend someone with the wrong pronoun, right? Talk about confusing, right? Girl walks in and you call her a girl and she wants to be called a dude. All of a sudden you've offended her. See you later, right? So these things have repercussions to real consequences, right? And I want us to understand that. Okay, but here's the dark history, okay? So the dark history of this is, it was in 1949, all right, a book called The Second Sex by, I'm about to butcher her name because it's French, but Simone de Beauvoir, right? Simone de Beauvoir. Right, I'm not French, sorry, get over it. That's like the Southern French name. So it was a theory or a philosophy that she came up with that you could raise a male or a female, the opposite gender, and that they would ultimately be that gender, right? But it was only a theory, right? It was only a theory. It had not been tested. It was only in the hypothesis form, right? So it hadn't yet been tested. But then in the 50s and 60s, a guy named John Money came along, and he was going to test it. And so what he did was he took two twin boys, right? One of those boys was David Reimer, and the other was Brian Reimer, right? And so David Reimer, I don't know if they cut his genitals off or if somehow he lost his genitals, therefore that's how they chose the twins. I don't know which one it is. Maybe somebody in the comment below can let me know that. I couldn't find that. But anyways, David had lost his genitals, and so this John Money guy took him and started to raise him as a female. Right? He was going to put this hypothesis to the test. And so through treatment and social conditioning, this boy ultimately was raised as a girl, and it seemed to be successful. And so like it was celebrated, right? It was celebrated across the academia world, right? That this gender theory, modern gender theory, had now been tested and it was successful. Well, then it started coming out on some of the ways in which the treatment was done, right? And so I want to read you something from the article by David Reimer. David actually came out and said this. He said, during the twins' psychiatric visit with Money, and as part of his research, Reimer and his twin brother were directed to inspect one another's genitals and engage in behavior resembling sexual intercourse. Reimer claimed that much of Money's treatment involved the forced reenactment of sexual positions and motions with his brother. In some exercises, the brothers rehearsed missionary positions with thrusting motions, which Money justified as the rehearsal of healthy childhood sexual exploration. In his Rolling Stone interview, Reimer recalled that at least once Money photographed those exercises. Yeah, it was wicked. I mean, severely wicked. I mean, how's this guy not in jail? Like, this is insane, but this is where it comes from, right? This is the dark history. This is the dark history, right? Now, the only problem with this dark history, I want you to hear this, the only problem with this dark history is this, right? David, the twin brother that they raised as a girl, he never felt like a girl, right? And so then at the age of about 15, he came out to his parents and said, I want to return to live like a boy, right? When he found out about what they did to him and how they raised him and how they deceived him and exploited him, he was like, whoa, I want to go back to living like a boy because I've never really felt like a girl. Now keep in mind that this is the reason why we are separating gender and sex in universities today in gender study, because of this experiment. At 15 years old, he flips and he goes, hey, look, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. And then you know what? It gets even worse. You want to hear the worst part about it? 2002, Reimer's twin brother Brian took his own life with an overdose on antidepressants, and David's life became more troubling after that. Of course, he lost his brother. And eventually, he himself would kill himself with a sawed-off shotgun in the parking lot of a convenience store in 2004. You want to know why trans kids and trans in general, the suicide rate is out the roof? Because in the original study, both of them committed suicide. Both of them. So do you think what D. Wade and Ellen DeGeneres are teaching is a good parent strategy, considering it is taught on the back of this experiment? An experiment that took two twin brothers and had them doing sexual exploration on each other with different positions and feeling each other's genitals, and they justified this garbage by saying it was a healthy exploration of sexual exploration for children? And then both of them end up committing suicide? This is a healthy way to raise your Yeah, go to the website. Yeah, go to D. Wade's foundation that's teaching this stuff. Yeah, go raise your children like this and see what happens. You know why I'm passionate about this? Because you are destroying your child. You're destroying your child. They're 12 years old. They don't know. Why are parents taking cues from 12-year-olds? They're hormonal, they're emotional, they come to you with questions, and they need your guidance into reality. They don't need you to support the idea that they're going to go out and live their own truth. That is destructive in this life, and it's destructive in knowing their Creator, God. It's destructive in them ever aligning their life to reality. Guys, that's the history. That's the history of modern gender studies. There you go. That's the history. Now, the history of Christianity is this, that in the beginning, God created a world of potentiality out of goodness. He created this, and then he created man in his image. He created royal representatives out of his goodness, and he placed them in the earth, and he said, guys, listen, go out and subdue the earth. Go out and serve the earth. Go out and be stewards over this earth that I gave you. You see, God could have put culture, and he could have put cities, and he could have put all these things in the earth, but he didn't, because he wanted us to be a part of his project. He wanted us to be a part of his plan and his purposes and the things that he was doing in the earth. And he wanted to be our Father, and he wanted to dwell with us as we went out and we cultivated this earth and stewarded it well. It was about dwelling with our Heavenly Father, with our Creator God. And God put one restriction on this earth. He put one restriction. That's it. He said, guys, do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't do it. You know why? Because that's my job. That is the job of God, to define that which is good and evil, that which is right and wrong. And if you take that upon yourself, if you do the one thing that I told you not to do, and you play God, it is going to be absolutely destructive for you in this life and for the next, because it is going to separate you from me, because you rebelled against your good and holy and just and righteous Creator, who wanted nothing for you but good, who wanted to lead you into the path of joy. But you decided to play God and spit in my face and tell me that you, a simple created being, a finite created being, knows more than me, the Creator. And so what happened? Sin happened. Sin happened. And just like God told us, if you do that, you shall surely die. What happened? They died. They spiritually died. Sin came into their life. Shame came into their life. They hid, and we today are still hiding. We are hiding in darkness, afraid to come into the light. You know why? Because we don't trust in the goodness and the faithfulness of God. We know the things that we're doing aren't working for us. We know that. We sit in the darkness and we continue in the cycles, even though we know they don't work, because we're afraid to move into the light. Because at least the things that we've clothed ourselves with in the darkness, we at least know that we have some sort of false sense of security in our insecurities. And if we come out into the light, we know that we will be fully naked, and now we have to trust in God to be good and faithful. But you know what's beautiful about the Word of God, which most of you don't read, is that God in the very beginning tells Adam and Eve to come out of the woods, of the trees, and he says, hey, take the fig leaves off. He says, yeah, you're trying to clothe your outer self with a fig leaf. That is religion. You're trying to deal with the outside, where I want to deal with the inside. You're dead on the inside, and I want to deal with that. Take the fig leaf off, and he goes over and he kills an animal, and God takes it upon himself to clothe humanity in the garden and at the cross. In the garden and at the cross. In his Son, which he gave up for us. That is the story of Christianity. That is the story of reality. That is. I get trying to play God. I do. I get it. I get the desire within us to go out and try to create an identity rather than receive an identity. But at some point, I recognize that all of my troubles in life came from those two things. All of my troubles in life came from playing God and trying to create an identity and expecting the world to adhere to that which I created. And when I finally humbled myself and recognized the truth and positioned myself beneath the truth and aligned myself to the truth, I was set free. I was set free by the love of God. And that's it, guys. I mean, there's two types of people in the world. There's those people that align their life to the truth and receive the righteousness of Christ and the love of God in His Son, Jesus. And there's those who will forever try to play God and define that which is good and evil and that which is right and wrong. And ultimately, they're going to be judged. And they're going to spend an eternity separated from God. All of these things will be judged. And they will be judged rightly. And you need to understand that. The only thing that will get you to escape the judgment of God is the righteousness of Christ. That's it. Because He is the only one that came into the world and lived the life that we have to live in order to dwell with a holy God. And then He died the death that we deserved so that we could have peace with God. Romans 5:1. A beautiful scripture. So that humanity can once again dwell with God in all of eternity. That's the point of the gospel. That's the point of the Bible. To give us that revelation so that we can know who God is and who we are and what's wrong with the world and how it's being made right again. That is reality. Not this. This is not reality. This is sin. This is wicked. And this is leading to your everlasting destruction. So I plead with you, do not teach your child this. Teach your child reality. And if you want to know more about this, I defend reality constantly. The difference between me and Ellen and Dwayne Wade is they want to seclude themselves, they want to put themselves in a bubble, and they want to teach their kids and indoctrinate their kids in a lie that has deceived them, right? And they want to teach their kids to play God because they themselves play God. And then when you try to have a reasonable conversation with them, they are going to shut that down or tell you that you are unloving. I am not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I will defend Christianity with anybody that wants to sit down and talk with me, and I will show you that it is the story of reality. I will show you that the Bible is the story of reality. Anytime you want to sit down, anytime you want to talk to it, anytime you want to Skype, anytime you want to have an exchange, I'll do that. You know why I'm not afraid of that? Because the truth wins out. I'm not afraid of it because the truth wins out. And the story of reality is the story of Christianity. Love and truth are represented at the cross. God is love. God is truth. The end. I love you guys. Have a great day.